Hello everyone. Welcome to Steve Couper's podcast for aspiring real estate investors. In each episode, we connect with seasoned investors and industry subject matter experts that are eager to share their experiences and tips for success when investing in real estate. Now, before I go too far down the road, I want to remind everybody, please hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, it'd be awesome if you click the like button. If you really like it, share it with your friends. Let's make sure, add comments if you think this is something you want to actually have expand on. We love it all. So today is a really great day. I'm stoked to introduce my friend and my guest for Steve Couper's podcast. I believe this is number 29. So,
Co-author.
hmm?
Don't forget we're co-authors in a book.
Well, I won't forget that. But let's go. Let's talk about you now. So you graduated from Ryerson with a degree in chemical engineering. You're
Yes.
a PEng, a
Yes.
PMP, but in 2016 you left engineering to become a full-time real estate investor. You specialize in buy and hold, lease options, single family, multifamily properties, mortgage financing, and private lending, which sounds like you specialize in everything. You've got the ability to find options in every situation and to simplify strategies to help um, you be and your investors be massively successful in real estate. You're a YouTube host as well, and you're a best-selling author of two, not one, but two books. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Huong Luu.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Steve.
It is indeed my pleasure. Now, before we go too far down the road, did I forget anything? Did I get anything wrong?
So only one of the books was a best-selling author.
Oh.
The Path to Mortgage Freedom never made it to number one. In my opinion, it's actually a very valuable book because it can actually save families over hundreds of thousands of dollars. So in my mind, that in itself is worth a number one best-selling spot. Um, I don't specialize in single families anymore. I might have, I think, one condo in my portfolio. So out of like the hundreds of doors that I have, only one is a condo. Everything else is multifamily.
Is that right?
Yeah, and car washes. Yeah.
Multifamily and car washes. I think car
Yeah,
washes is
one car
pretty.
wash.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. I mean, are you investing? We live here together in the Lower Mainland of British Columbia. Are you investing locally or are you investing all across Canada?
So all across Canada, I have one land development in Cranbrook, BC, and then I've got two on the island. But other than those three, I guess the rest would probably be considered private lands. And other than that, I don't have a lot of stuff in BC just because of the price point. And I physically have only been in BC for about 3, 4 years. So I'm still just learning about the market and where to be able to buy. But I actually invest all across Canada.
Mhm.
And I sort of believe that each province has its pros and cons. So now I should back up here because even though I say I only have three projects in BC, they're actually massive projects. Like it's not just one or two doors. Like there's one project is 40 doors that we're converting to 45 doors. Another one is a 71 build. Another one is like a 260 unit development. So it's not tiny peanut stuff that we're talking about.
Well, there you go, folks. There's no lack of opportunities. Reach out to Huang Lu if you're interested in investing. You've got a smorgasbord of things to choose from.
Yeah.
Let's hear about the other what you've got in the rest of Canada. Let's talk about it.
So I've got 50 doors or so in Edmonton. I'm currently building my eightplex there, so that's going to change the numbers a little bit. And that's also where the car wash is. And then I've got 30 or so doors in Saskatchewan.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you went to Ryerson, so you started investing in Ontario. Did you keep any properties there?
Oh yeah, downtown Toronto. I was really lucky. I got my first place second year university
Yeah.
and still have that property, still have my second and my third and my fourth. So I've only sold two properties in my entire 25 plus years of real estate investing.
Wow.
Everything else has been long-term hold,
Long-term hold, buy and hold. I love
buy
it.
and hold. Yeah, leverage it, pay off the mortgage as quickly as possible. Like you mentioned, using the Smith maneuver, wherever possible, leveraging the properties and then just growing. So yeah, so selling is not usually in my repertoire.
Perfect. So
Mhm.
let's you mentioned the Smith maneuver. So and that's I think a strategy that you employed early on in order to actually reach the point where you could retire from engineering, right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Why don't
So
you tell us about how that happened?
yeah, so the Smiths maneuver was something that I started doing without knowing that it was called the Smiths maneuver. And now there's so much information on the net, and some of it is incorrect, right? So there are individuals in the real estate market that specialize specifically in the Smiths maneuver. I don't specialize in it. I just use it. And I started using it in my first, like on every single property that I own. So it wasn't just the first or second property. I actually use it even to today. I still use it. And it's, the simplest form of it is just leveraging your property to and tap into the equity. So when I first started using the Smiths maneuver, it was in my very first property where I was house hacking. So I was living in there, had two rental units, and I would pay down the mortgage as quickly as possible. I had a HELOC tied to it. So as I was paying the mortgage down, my HELOC amount would increase.
Mhm.
And then at some point, I was able to pull out that HELOC and go and buy my next place.
Right on. Now, the Smith maneuver uses a special mortgage product. I think it's called a readvanceable mortgage. Is that what you're talking about there?
Ideally, you do want the readvanceable because as you pay down your mortgage, the HELOC amount goes up. There's some mortgage products that they cap it for you and they say, okay, at the most it's going to be 150,000,
Mhm.
right? So then when you reach that cap, that's all you get, right? It still works. It's just that you want to be able to go up above whatever they're capping you at, ideally.
Perfect. And so that's a fantastic way to take advantage of the equity that you're building in your home and be able to still own that home or
Yes.
property and then use that equity and acquire the next one.
Yeah.
That's what you
Yeah.
did. And
Yeah. Yes. And it's really a great idea, especially for Canadians, because we don't have the same taxation allowances that our counterparts in the US have. Like here, our mortgage interest is not a tax deductible expense,
yeah.
right? But by utilizing the Smiths maneuver, your mortgage, which is one of your biggest living expense on your primary property, now becomes a tax deductible expense, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
What a great strategy. I love this. And so you mentioned you use it on every property you own. So across the country now, you've been acquiring properties and you're using the Smith maneuver with readvanceable mortgage products for all of these. At what point in your investing career did you say to yourself, I don't need to work anymore. I'm going to do this full time. How did that come about? Was that something that was fast? Did it take a while before the light bulb went on? Where were you in the
Oh,
journey?
I would say, Steve, even though I have an engineering background and I'm, really good with Excel, a lot of these sort of ideas that I come across do take a long time for it to register with me. And so the idea of retiring from engineering never crossed my mind for like 18 years. Like I worked as a full-time engineer for 18 years. And the first time that it really hit me was around the 08, 09 when the economy was suffering
Right.
and I got laid off. And I was like, what? I'm middle management engineering. I should never get laid off. Like, I should have a job for the rest of my life. And so when I got laid off, it really made me look at, okay, well, how am I going to, make my monthly bills? And that's when I realized, hey, you know what? I've got rental income coming in. I actually don't need to work anymore. Right. So I still went back into engineering and I got another engineering job and worked. And it was only around 2017, 2018. So a couple of years, like another 10 years later, where it actually, it clicked and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to be a new mom at some point. I don't want to have to go to a 9 to 5. I want to be able to stay home, be a stay-at-home mom, and be as present and available for my kid as much as possible. And so once that idea, like there was a motivation behind me saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave the engineering job.
Mhm.
And so once I started thinking that way, then it was like, okay, well, what do I need to do to transition? And so then at that point, it was about a 9 month window that I gave myself to be able to get my finances in order, to be able to make sure that that I wouldn't have to have a regret and go back to the engineering world after leaving.
So that is, I mean, first off, the most important role that I think any of us have is looking after our children. How wonderful that you're able to do that. That's a
Yeah.
fantastic motivator. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you came through the 2008 mortgage meltdown and you survived through that, and you got a chance to see firsthand all of the pain that can be inflicted on others. Like that was a really hard time for a lot of investors. Did that help you change, or did that allow you to change any of your strategies for risk management or risk mitigation to try and ensure that you were bulletproof as you went through similar ups and downs in the market since? How did that impact you?
Yeah. So, you know what, Steve? I think the biggest challenge for me in my journey was that I didn't have the network
Hmm.
of support that we have available now in our real estate community. And so when I started, it was before internet, it was before REIN, it was before a lot of these groups existed. And so there was nobody for me to even ask saying, hey, what's happening with this meltdown? Like, what's going on here? What's going on there? Right. My biggest thing around the '08, when I sort of knew that something was going on, I actually went and bought another property. Like my thought process was, okay, I know I'm going to get laid off. I'm going to leverage my full-time job as much as possible. And I went and bought another property. And there were so many people who said, Hung, you are friggin' crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to get laid off. We don't know what the economic situation is going to be. Why would you go and buy another place? And my belief was, you know what? The market's going to pick up, right? However long this blip is going to be, that's fine. But because I have my mid-management engineering job, I could qualify for another mortgage.
Hmm.
So I went and I bought this beautiful cottage and we did short-term rentals on there and it was amazing. Right. So I don't regret making that move. But in terms of like, did my strategy change? No, it was always long-term hold. It was always make sure that I had enough cash flow to cover the purchase, the monthly expenses. And as long as I didn't over leverage, then we were good. Right. Steve, in all honesty, like back then, I didn't even know what NOI was. I
Yeah.
didn't even know, like this whole concept of cash flowing. Like I just knew, okay, as long as I had enough money coming in on one end and enough money to cover the other, I was good.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, it's the logic, right? Without having to put all the new acronyms and the vernacular of real estate to full test you, the fundamentals of business, income, expense, debt
Yeah.
service, what have I got left? Right? That's really all you need to know if you think about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. So, like, for a lot of new investors coming in, they get caught up in this. Well, I don't know enough yet. I don't know enough yet. Like, I need to analyze another deal. I need to look at this. I need to get more information. And one of my beliefs is, you know what? Get as much information as you can and then make a decision. And then at some point, adjust your decision if you need to. But you're never, ever going to have all the information,
Mhm.
right? As long as you have 60, 70% of the information, you're probably good to make a decision.
So true, so true.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's one of the things I think you're describing the analysis paralysis that so many people face, right?
Yeah.
And being
Yeah.
able to go back through the numbers and through the numbers, but I think from what I'm experiencing and noticing is there are good deals and there are not so good deals, but the negotiation will vet them out. The challenge I find is raising capital,
Mhm.
money in one hand and that opportunity in the other, in order to actually bring those two together. And that seems to be something that the timing of one or the other is not aligned in many ways. How do you see that?
So I raise capital for a lot of my projects that I'm on. And so it's one of those things where, okay, if it's a great opportunity and if it's money that I would put my own money into,
Mhm.
then it's one that I would raise money for. Right. So in terms of finding opportunities and making sure that you have the money to go for it, you're absolutely right. Like sometimes it can be so difficult because you have one without the other, right? Or like say on the two opportunities that I'm working on the island, we're able to take registered funds. And so in today's market, that's huge, right? Like it's like a lot of people are cash poor, but they have money in their registered accounts, right? And the registered accounts aren't doing that great. So this is another alternative, right? So, and then if you think about just the compounding effect of being able to utilize your TFSA to put into real estate like this, it's massive.
Massive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the TFSA approach. I think that that's something not enough people understand.
Mhm.
There's so much that I don't understand about it, but I think it's an investment vehicle. It's intended to be used as an investment vehicle. People need to understand that.
Yeah.
Put it to
It's
work.
so crazy. Yeah, you're so right on that. Like I still have clients coming to me saying, "Hey, Hong, you know what? I opened up my TFSA 3 years ago." I'm like, "Fantastic. How's it doing?" They're like, "What do you mean? I
Yeah.
opened
They're
it."
putting money in, they're not using it.
They're not using it. Like to them, the whole concept of, okay, once I put the money in, to them, that's where it stops. And I'm like, no, no, no. Like, here's what you need to do afterwards,
Yeah.
right? Putting your money into the TFSA without making that next investment step, you basically haven't done anything with it. Like you haven't leveraged it or utilized it to its fullest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I know personally is there tends to be a lot of I don't know, it's a surplus sitting in Olympia Trust. For
Uh,
instance, I had $10,000 or the better part of $10,000, which isn't enough to make threshold for a lot of investments.
yeah.
And so finding something to do with these small amounts that are sitting there and doing nothing. It's something that I think a lot of people ignore or forget about. And there's got to be a good way to actually put those to use. What do you recommend for that?
So in those situations where you have just a little bit, you can actually negotiate with who you have the other funds with and say to them, hey, you know what? I've got this extra little bit. Can we tack that on? And now so like if you had, let's say 80,000 and you have another 10,000. So now your $80,000 loan is now increased to 90.
Yeah.
And a lot of borrowers are happy to make that increase,
Hmm. Okay. Well,
right?
there's a suggestion. That's a good one.
Yeah, so that's one option. The other option is that you can utilize your Olympia Trust accounts to do other types of smaller investment. So there's other platforms like Addy, there's and then there's a bunch of other ones that, it's $500 to $1,000 to get in,
Yeah.
right? So you don't need a ton of money, basically.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, when what I touched on earlier about risk management, there's a lot of folks in recent days that I think were over leveraged and they found themselves struggling with the interest rates and so there's a lesson that people have come away learning. A lot of folks that would be willing to lend money 2 years ago may not be today,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
and a lot of folks that were successful are no longer enjoying
Mm.
that mantle of success. So how do you approach your investments with what risk strategies? Just to dive into that a bit further, what strategies do you use to secure those investments and de-risk them?
Yeah. So this whole over leverage thing really came into light as one of the after effects of COVID, right? So during COVID, everybody seemed to be fine. Everything was sort of humming along. And then once sort of, COVID was finished, that's when we started seeing the rippling effects of all of the stuff that was happening in COVID. And so we saw a lot of these reputable firms or mortgage groups or investor groups going under because of being over leveraged, right? And so I would say it hasn't just been in the last couple of days or the last weeks. It's been, I would say, a good year and a half to 2 years now that we're seeing this ripple effect. And we're still going to continue to see it probably for another year or two. Okay. So now a lot of people who are sort of new within the real estate world, like within the last 5 years, some of them are saying, well, you know what? It's the interest rate. Well, here's the thing. It's not the interest rate. In the 90s, I was dealing with rates of 10 plus. right? So for us to like for me now to even get a 5% rate, I'm happy with that. Like even to get a 7 or 8%, I'm okay with that, right? Because I know what it used to be like at 12+%,
Yeah.
right? And so one of the things that I always do along the way is make sure I have more than one exit, right? So meaning like, is it an Airbnb? But can I, if the Airbnb doesn't work out, can I do long-term rentals? Does the number still work at long term?
Right.
Right? If my flip doesn't go well, like in terms of like I can't flip it, can I hold on to it? Can I refinance it and make sure that I can hold on to it for another year or two? Right. So part of that de-risking is making sure you have an alternative exit strategy. Right. Like right now in BC or like in Vancouver, we are seeing so many condos going up on the market because people only had that one strategy, which was Airbnb.
Yeah.
And now with the new regulations, they're not able to, right? And so now the value's gone down. They can't sell it. They're carrying the mortgage, and it's a tough spot to be in because, they can't offload it, right? So the other thing as well is making sure that you run your portfolio numbers with the worst case scenario. So for example, like in my case, like I've got 101 doors. Well, what if my tenants don't pay rent?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's unrealistic to say 100%, but what if, right? Like with my private lending, what if 100% of them went into default, right? Run those numbers and then put in some mitigation plans to say, okay, if that happened, this is what we would do,
Yeah.
right?
And that comes back to your PMP, the fundamentals of building a risk management plan and a business plan that then considers those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like during COVID, I had 100% vacancy in my Toronto properties.
Yeah.
In 20 odd years, never had that before. Like I might have one unit come up one year, another unit another year, never all six within like a 3-month period.
Wow.
Crazy, crazy time frame.
Yeah, that must have been an eye opener.
It was because I've never experienced that before, right? And so like my property manager in Toronto was super happy because he made some money. My contractor was happy, like everybody else was happy.
Not so not so easy though. But I mean, certainly, you're right because Toronto itself, the downtown core, lost a lot of life in COVID, right? People found a way to move out. They found cheaper accommodations.
Yeah,
Didn't need to work
or
and live
commute. Yeah,
so close to
exactly.
downtown. The
Yeah,
empty office spaces still exist.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
very. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so tell me a bit more then about your goals and things you want to do in the future. So your son, he's growing into a healthy young teen. He's starting to show you what's coming up. You've got a full plate parenting, and you're still investing and looking at more properties. What are you seeing the future look like in the 5 or 10 year time frame? What are you striving for?
Yeah, so I'm still looking at growing the portfolio. I'm looking at growing our family office, right? And like my end goal is to make sure that my portfolio is passed on to my kid, and then he would steward that for the next generation and teach them to steward it for the next generation. So it's not so much that I'm building this just for him, right? It's building a legacy that he can carry forward. And then my other thing that I really am working on is educating families how to be mortgage free, how to leverage their asset to buy more real estate, right? So that they can also have that intentional lifestyle. They can have options to send their kids to school during COVID if they want to, or take a year off and travel abroad with their kids,
Yeah.
right? Like there's so many choices that we can have if we have the financial means to make them.
Yep. Yep. I love that. I really do. And so this is something you're doing through your YouTube channel, or this is something you're doing through the cash properties. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that's your masterminds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The masterminds, I host a Monday Facebook Live that goes onto YouTube. And so on the Monday one, we're just showing calculations so that everybody sort of makes the best decisions for the money. And then we host a monthly mastermind where we talk about different real estate concepts. And then that's all done through the cash property
That's,
company. Yeah.
yeah, I love it. Okay, so Huang, I think I've actually ferreted out the answer to this question already.
Okay.
But let's talk about your why. Let's
Okay.
talk about what it is that is moving you forward, has moved you from the beginning in this direction, and how that's evolved. Are you still following that same why, or has it changed? And is there a shining light at the end of the tunnel? And do you know what it's going to look like when you get there, or is it always
Yeah.
going to be moving? Tell me.
Yeah. So when I originally, worked on my why, it was, oh, well, it's to pass everything off to my kid. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, no, you know what? It's really because one, I'm lazy and I don't want to have to work for my money,
Yeah.
right? And so part of having all this real estate is having that passive income that comes with it, right? And so really it's just like my why is so that I can have choices, that I'm not bound to another person financially, right? Like my parents are divorced, and one of the things that I saw growing up was my mom having to ask for money to go buy stuff. And I grew up never wanting to be in a position where I had to go and ask my partner for money.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And so for me to have that financial independence, to be able to say, hey, you know what? For the next 6 months, I want to travel to China with my kid, or, we want to go to Whistler or Big White for a family trip. Right. I want to be able to just make those decisions and have the money to be able to execute on them.
Yeah.
Right. That's really what my big why is, so that I can have a bank account full of money so that I can make those decisions so that, yeah, so that we can have fun and have the wonderful life that we want.
Perfect. Perfect. Huang, we're getting close to the end here. Do you how if somebody wants to reach you,
Okay.
how should they go about doing that?
Super easy. My QR code is right up here.
Love this.
Just scan it and you'll get a 20-minute meeting with me, and we will chit chat about real estate. And yeah, I love to help other individuals figure out how to get financial freedom. And it might not be real estate, but that's usually the way it is.
That's awesome. I love this. Any questions for me, Huang?
No, perfect. Thank you so much, Steve.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
you're welcome. I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Bye now.
Okay, thanks,
All right.
buddy.